combating nutrition disinformation and general bull. It's Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com.
What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another Instagram Live. And I've got another episode of Jimmy Rants all in store for you here today. And it's a very timely one about something that just happened. So look forward to sharing about that here in just a minute. JimmyRants.com is the website if you want to learn more about how this works. But what it is we start off on Instagram. I do a live video there. Go follow me at Livin' Low Carb Man, LIVIN LOWCARBMAN, and you can engage live like I'll be doing with these people down here in just a minute. Welcome in, guys. And then you can watch it on the replay for 24 hours on Instagram. And then after that, Instagram, it disappears. So then we put it up on YouTube. So go look up Jimmy Rants as a keyword search on YouTube. You can see all the past episodes. And then we also have a Jimmy Rants podcast that has highlights of the best moments from the Jimmy Rants episodes. Again, all of it is housed at JimmyRants.com. Today's Jimmy Rants is all about the U.S. school lunch program. So you might have heard something in the news this week about the Trump administration relaxing the, I guess, parameters that were put in place for the U.S. school lunch program that were put in place during the Obama administration. And Michelle Obama had promoted that they include more whole grains instead of refined grains, which was a good move in terms of getting people off of refined grains. Whole grains, we'll get to that in a minute. And they allowed for low-fat milk, which is 2% milk, whereas the Obama regulation was for fat-free milk. And there's some other things, but I've seen several headlines out there saying that they're now allowing refined grains and low fat, and how horrible this is, that it's taking away all the good changes that had happened to the school lunch program under the previous administration. All right, let's have a healthy discussion about this, because quite frankly, both are horrible. Both of them were horrible. So let's back up. Michelle Obama did a lot of great things to try to champion real food and champion having kids eat better in their school lunches. But let's be honest, whole grains are still not cutting it for kids. And fat-free milk was not any better than the low-fat milk. At least if they had brought back whole milk and eliminated the chocolate milk to get rid of the sugar, that would have been a better move than to go to fat-free. And then here's the thing. They wanted to go to whole grains. Is there really any such thing as a whole grain food? Think this through a little bit. Did you know that if you tried to eat a whole grain, just straight up whole grain that doesn't have any refining on it at all, you would probably break your teeth, right? And so this illusion that, oh, we should have kids eat whole grains. And here's the other thing. Are they soaking and sprouting those grains, which is what the Weston A. Price Foundation would say if you're going to eat grains, in order to remove the anti-nutrients out of them, you need to soak them and sprout them. Yes, they still have carbohydrates, but at least they be more digestible and they get rid of the anti-nutrients that are in it. But will they be doing that with whole grains? No. So for them to switch now back to refined grains and now going to low fat instead of fat-free milk, guys, neither one of these options was great. So if I had my druthers in a perfect world, here is what a U.S. school lunch program would be a la Jimmy Moore. You guys ready? I think it should be predicated on real whole foods, ideally grown by the kids. So let's set up gardens on school property that the kids have to maintain and water and plant and do all the caretaking for. And then kids get out there as the plants grow, they get out there and they pick the vegetation. And they get out there in the morning time and they grab what's available and then they take it to the lunchroom. And then the lunchroom people can cook it and make it available for the school lunch. Now, obviously, they would need to plant quite a bit in order to feed all the kids. But how cool would that be? Because you're then teaching the kids this is where food comes from. You ask most kids these days, where does food come from? And they'll tell you the grocery store. And we need kids to know that food comes from the ground. Food comes from what you harvest, at least vegetation kind of food. And then why not have chickens that they can take care of? And again, have eggs available that would be fresh eggs. And how hard would this be? I realize there are budget limitations with these school lunches. I used to be a substitute teacher way back in the day, and I want to say that the cost per student that they were trying to keep the school lunches to was around $2 per student. Well, for $2 a student, you're not going to be able to get very good quality food. So therefore, it shows up on the plate as a bunch of processed, cheap crap, because quite frankly, that's all they can afford. So if they could lift some of that restriction on the budget and allow them to now grow their own vegetables, have their own chickens, and that kind of thing, and then supplement it then with at least the best quality sources of meat that they can find, okay, great. Now you have a much more nutrient-dense selection of foods for these kids. But what do they choose to do? They choose to throw them pasta. They choose to throw them white bread. They choose to give them the crappiest of the crappy garbage that there is. And if they want dessert, why can't we feed them berries and cream? I don't know why this has to be so difficult. And so these changes that you're hearing about all over the news right now in the U.S. school lunch program, they're not worse than the old ones. They're basically just as bad. And so if we're going to get serious about wanting to do something proactive for students' health and students' ability to perform in the classroom, why aren't we giving those kids more healthy fats? Because we know that one of the things that calms down the mood of people is having healthy fats, because your brain needs that. And those little brains, they need the fat in order to thrive. How many of these mood outbreaks and all of this that happens in schools, how much attention deficit disorder and all of this stuff that's being diagnosed could actually be a fat deficiency with the kids. So why are we removing the fat from these kids' diets? We should be encouraging kids to be eating more fat and eating more healthy carbohydrates and eating plenty of protein for their growing bodies. I just don't understand how and why we feed kids in schools, in public schools in America, the way that we feed them. It needs a complete overhaul, the entire U.S. school lunch program, and until that happens, we can keep on suffering academically. Because you think about how America suffers academically, and I think a big part of that is because, not just school lunches, but just because of bad nutrition in general. Here's the thing. If kids get fed well at school, maybe they get some vegetables cooked in bone broth, and they go home and go, Mom, I gotta have vegetables like they cook at school. Mom's gonna go, what in the world are they doing at school? And maybe she calls the principal, hey, what do they do? Oh, they're growing their own vegetables, and they're cooking the vegetables in bone broth, and they're having this and this and this, and maybe it starts a revolution. I realize I'm dreaming big here. I realize that this is probably more pie in the sky than what could actually happen, but I have interviewed a few people on the Livin' La Vida Low Carb show where schools are actually doing this idea of getting kids back to where their food comes from, and they're growing their own garden, and they're doing all of the things that I'm talking about. How cool would it be if some of these changes that I've talked here today could be implemented with the U.S. school lunch program? That's the overhaul that I think we need to see. All right, let's see what you guys have to say. Welcome in, welcome in. Hello, Bonnie Lene. Thanks for being here. Hello, Christine. Hello, Norma's Beacon says, is the podcast on Stitcher? I looked it up. Jimmy Rants couldn't find it. Yeah, it should be wherever you listen to podcasts. So go to jimmyrants.com. We have clickable links on all of the various ways that you can listen, and Stitcher is one of those at jimmyrants.com. Hello, Ashton. Thanks for being here. Hello, Tracy. Thanks for being here. Lilla Grand, all my usual suspects. I love the idea of real foods grown by kids, Lilla Grand says. Yeah, I mean, how cool would that be? I just started growing a garden about 5 years ago for the first time in my life. I was never given that opportunity when I was a kid. I never had any adult come into my life and say, hey, you want to know where those vegetables come from? Let's go plant a garden. What do you like? You like tomatoes? Let's plant a tomato plant and let's watch what happens, and then grow your own tomatoes. Here's what happens with those kids when that happens. They grow a tomato and they say, I grew that. And then they eat that tomato. And what appreciation do you have for the food that you eat when you yourself are the one growing it? As someone who's done this the last 5 years, growing my own vegetables in my vegetable garden, food never tastes so good. And then I've got backyard chickens back here. Those eggs never taste so good. Now, partly they never taste so good because they're quality eggs, but I know that I'm the caretaker of those animals and I'm nourishing my body. There's a connection to your food that I wish we could get kids to understand. And the only way they can understand it is if they're connected to the food, either by growing it, by harvesting it, by raising chickens, even having a cow and milking the cow. How cool would it be for those kids to experience where their food comes from? Keto Neogenesis says a local high school has a cooking class for special needs students, and they grow their own food. The cafeteria still serves crap. And see, to me, that's a travesty. If you've got the ability and the space on your land as a school, and you're not using that space for growing at least a nominal sized garden, it's a missed opportunity in my opinion. And think about, again, how wonderful it would be for the kids to have pride in knowing that they contributed to their meal. That connection, guys, I think we miss this quite a bit in the discussion of carbohydrates and fats and proteins. We forget about that intimate connection that we should have with our food and where it comes from. And if you know that it's local and doesn't get more local than right there on your school campus, there's just something about that that you can't take away. And kids will remember that. And then when they get out of school, they go and live on their own. Guess what they're going to do? They're going to grow their own vegetables. They're going to possibly have their own chickens. They're going to do all the things that we talk about on a daily basis in my work. They're just going to do it because it will be a normal part of their life. We need to make real food normal again, right? Tracy says, I agree 100%. We owned a preschool for 23 years in NorCal, and our children all participated in the whole process. We had chickens, goats, and horses. And Tracy, I think that's a great idea, because if you get kids connected to their food, then they'll appreciate it more and they'll want to be intimately involved with their food for the rest of their lives. I think we'll stop shopping in grocery stores if we knew where our food came from. I don't really go to the grocery store that often. I'll get a few things here and there, coconut oil and things like that, but for the most part, I'm not buying the vast majority of what they're selling in those grocery stores. I'm getting real whole foods from other sources and on my own property that I'm harvesting. Kimberly Jackson Simmons says we homeschool for many reasons, and this one is on the list. Yeah, so you guys have a garden and do all kinds of things to teach your kids. I think that's wonderful. Would the kids actually eat good foods? Paula, you have asked the million-dollar question, because whenever this comes up in the mainstream of discussion, well, kids, they won't eat good, healthy foods for them. I remember Michelle Obama, when she started implementing some of her changes, and she had a picture of some broccoli in her hand, and she was eating some broccoli. And of course, I think this is where preparation matters. Because if you do it a low-fat way, the kids are going to rebel. But if you cook those vegetables in bone broth and in butter, I guarantee you kids will embrace it. I guarantee you flavor is all that matters. And of course, right now, their little palates have been inundated with sugar, have been inundated with the crappiest of the crappy garbage that there possibly could be. And I think once you give them a taste of the gloriousness of what real food can taste like when it's prepared well, Johnny bar the door. I mean, these kids will be clamoring to have real, whole, good foods that will nourish them. Our ADD child thrives on keto, and yeah, and he will. And he thrives on it because it helps keep that condition under control. There's a lot of kids in public schools now that they're diagnosed as ADD, but really all they are is FAT in their brain deficient. And it's just not there. Hello, Lauren. Thanks for being here. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the U.S. school lunch program. It's made the news this week, you guys, because there were changes that were made by the Trump administration that overhauled what the Obama administration had done. Michelle Obama's initiative was to get more whole grains instead of refined grains, to have fat-free milk instead of regular milk, 2% milk, and a couple of other changes. And so the new switches back to 2% milk from fat-free milk, and then also allows the refined grains back in because the entities said it was too restrictive. And I'm saying both ways were wrong, and that this school lunch program needs a complete overhaul. And my suggestion is get kids connected back to their food again so that they can grow their own vegetables, have their own chickens, take care of their own animals. How cool would it be? Kids are connected to their food again. Ashton says if the parents got on board with better nutrition, that would help. And indeed, Ashton, and I think this could be a first step in getting parents on board. I think parents are doing what they think they should do for kids. And a lot of parents out there, I'm not a parent, so I can't speak firsthand, but a lot of parents out there are like, well, I ate junk as a kid and I turned out okay, so therefore that's what kids should get. Or kids shouldn't have to worry about healthy eating. That's something for adults. And I'm thinking, okay, if I'd known then when I was 7 or 8 years old that I would turn into an adult that would struggle with some health issues that could have been prevented had I only eaten a more nutrient-dense diet, I think I would have slapped my mama and said, hello, let's eat good, because I don't want to have to deal with all the heartache and pain of obesity and various diseases down the road that would be inevitable. And all I have to do is eat bacon and eggs for breakfast in the morning instead of blueberry crunch and orange juice, right? But yes, parents need to get on board. Create Pure Health, I agree. My girls are 13. I'm also concerned about finding colleges that have healthier food options, working hard now with them, focusing on organic, and I feel the groundwork I'm building will be lost. So yeah, I think if you put it in language that they understand, and I realize 13 is a very hard age to get them to fully understand. I think back, I didn't really care about what any adult had to say till maybe I was 22, 21, 22. So I get it. But I think if you impress them enough with what it is that you're doing and show them that it could taste good, and then keep explaining this is what you're trying to avoid down the road, maybe, just maybe, it'll sink in. So I wish you well in that. Grandma Does Keto says, we had a huge garden. Little kids were great for crawling under the peas and beans and harvesting. If we got any at the other end, we were lucky. Yeah, I bet. Gina Cease says, wow, Jimmy, what a great idea for school lunches. It might be pie in the sky at the moment. This is what it takes to make a change. Thank you for what you do. And Gina, I think it's implementable. That's the thing here. What I am suggesting is not far-fetched. How cool would it be? They always want to come up with government programs to help with health and help, you know, with diabetes and obesity and all of these things. Why don't we start at the kid level? Because if you change the diet of the kids now, and again, it doesn't have to be a low-carb diet. I'm talking about just getting them to eat real whole foods. And if they can grow their own real whole foods, and during the summer, somebody could caretake the garden and make sure it keeps going, have a greenhouse for when it gets cold. Man, the sky is the limit with this idea. And it would not be that much money. And think of all the money that they save in other ways, not having to deal with disruptions in the classroom, behavioral issues. I'm sure the Kerry Gold Company would provide them with a great discount on getting grass-fed butter. Man, this is just, it should be done, and it can be done if we have the will and the way to make it happen. Keto Nana 5, unfortunately our demographics are majority free and reduced lunches in over half of our schools. It's sad the quality of the meals that are prepared, the teachers don't even eat them. Yeah, when I was a substitute teacher, I wouldn't touch the school lunch. And I'm trying to remember, it was the year I was changing my diet that I became a substitute teacher. So 2003, 2004. 2004 was when I went on low carb for the first time. But I think I was a sub 2003 and 4. And yeah, whenever they served the meal, I'm going, this is what the kids have to eat? Really? Really? This is horrible. But you're right. It will be challenging. But all the more reason that the demographics make it so that most get reduced or free lunch. I think if we give these kids especially who don't have access at home, some of them go home and they don't have any food. So how about nourishing them with really good healthy fats and healthy carbohydrates and good amounts of protein at school, so that if they can't eat or if they eat inferior when they get home, at least they get one really solid nutrient-dense meal. I'm a terrible gardener, Carol St. Lawrence says, but I encourage my local organic farmers. Carol, you can grow, my dear. You need to come back up to Spartanburg. Carol's a friend, a fellow nutritional therapy practitioner to Christine that lives down the road from us. You should come back up here. We'll show you our greenhouse. It's right out there is our greenhouse. I don't know if you can see it through the window. See our greenhouse? You can grow, girl. Hashtag is my name. I had to start skipping breakfast and fast till school ended because of all the temptation. My school even has a huge sign saying, grain for your brain. Propaganda is what that is. Katarina says, school lunches are my nightmare. Yeah, well, you have little munchkins as well, and something tells me you're going to be sending great nutrient-dense foods with them to school. Stuff from home only, yeah. Grandma Does Keto. Some of us are old enough to remember schools without cafeterias. We were healthier too. When I was growing up as a child of the 80s, there was cafeterias. And you were lucky if even a portion of what you got was real food. I do remember getting chocolate milk. That's about the only, and then pizza on Fridays. Those were like my two favorite things. The chocolate milk, which was fat, low fat, and then the pizza on Friday because it was the only thing that was relatively edible in school. Healthy, I'm not answering just general questions. We're talking about school lunch program, but you can definitely private message me if you want to ask that question. Keto Nana 5, I agree. Our high school prepares all the food for elementary and it's shipped to the schools. It sits in warmers until lunchtime. There are just no options the older you get, middle and high school. Yeah. Get choices, but still not the best. Always a chef salad. Oh, Keto Nana 5. Yeah, when I got into the older grades, I was thinking mainly of elementary school, but in the older grades, that is what I used to get, was the chef salad. Whenever I was dieting, I would get the chef salad, and that was a decent option. Not enough fat in hindsight, but it was a decent option at the time. Bonnie Lene of the kids aren't 100% keto. Will the extra fat clog their arteries because they're still eating sugar and bad food? Just curious. I don't know about clog arteries. That I hate that imagery because it's so stupid. That's not how it works, by the way. But to your point, will it cause harm? It depends is the answer. Because kids in general can tolerate more carbohydrates than those of us with damaged metabolisms as adults. So I don't think so, but it's going to, again, depend on that individual kid. Biggest challenge for my kids is the temptation of all the crappy food at school. And Lila Grand, that's why I'm talking about trying to overhaul, completely overhaul the U.S. school lunch program, because they don't need all of those options. I recently did a book signing at Christine's alma mater school in Virginia, and in there they had a big vending machine that had all kind of junk, crackers and chips and all that stuff, and then they had a soda machine right next to it. So yeah, it is there. Constant snacking. Yeah, they have constant snacking. Give them real meals. Exactly. I'm surprised you haven't tried carnivore yet. Hello. I eat 95% carnivore. You got to pay attention, my dear. M4NN3QU1N. You're not paying attention if you don't think that. All right. I know this is bad, but I miss those big rectangular pizzas that taste like cardboard, Joshua Winslow. It was literally the best thing on the school lunch that they had. Yeah. At least it had a little flavor. I want to say the sausage or whatever they put on there, or those little cubes of pepperoni. Not sliced pepperoni, it had cubes of pepperoni that they'd put on there. They had a little flavor. Grandma does keto. I'm a child of the 50s. They made us buy milk. I hated milk. My mama went to war with them over that. And I wonder how many kids have maybe like a dairy sensitivity and they were making them drink this milk. It's crazy. Create Pure Health. Being a former teacher, it surprised me how many teachers eat the lunches. Yeah. Carol says, I saw you with Chef Pete Evans on the Paleo Way on Netflix. I love seeing you. Thank you. Yeah, if you missed it, I did have a cameo episode with Chef Pete Evans on a show called The Paleo Way. Go check it out on Netflix. Heard one of the universities now has bacon vending machines. Interesting. Keto Nana says, I always gave my milk away. You could trade the milk and get like whatever you wanted. If you wanted somebody's cookie, hey, I'll give you my milk if you'll give me your cookie. Those were prized possessions back in the day. Yes, and there is my inspiration for this episode, my low-carb path. That's my friend Kat. She said, hey, have you seen this school lunch program thing? And I said, oh, I got a different take on that one. So, Kat, thank you for inspiring this here today. I told you I would have a little bit of a different perspective about this. Definitely, it's not a good thing, the changes that they've made, but neither were the old things that were put into place from Michelle Obama. I appreciate that they care about it enough that they wanted to try to do something, but if you want to do something, I hope they somehow find this video on YouTube someday and see, oh, wow, how cool would that be? And we're not talking about really expensive. You know, if they wanted to throw, you know, a couple $1 million at this to try to, you know, give these schools individual areas that they can partition off, so they do a little construction to enclose in an area to be able to plant and maybe give them some seeds to get started. But once you got a garden going, you get free seeds every time it grows, and you can replant, and it would be a self-sustaining way to keep growing food year-round that would then feed the kids. Gerald says it's cool what Atkins was preaching. He was way ahead of the game. I liked what he had to say before he died of slip and fall. I hate how people said he died because of his diet. No, that's not what happened. He banged the back of his head really hard on New York City ice, and it was tragic. But he would love seeing what's happening today with the keto diet and how popular it's become. And he would probably have led the charge in getting school lunches changed by now. Do you really think they are really that clueless, or is this faulty food pyramid run amok? I don't think it's either one of those, Kat. I think they're just so set in their ways. They're also stuck with the budget constraints, and they think that they have to fit within the mold, because it's even in the law. And people say, well, food pyramid doesn't really matter. A lot of people say that. And yet school lunches have to follow, according to the law, the school lunches have to follow whatever it is that the dietary guidelines say. So if the dietary guidelines say you need to have whole grains in order to be healthy, guess what's going to be in the school lunches? Whole grains. And so we should not be surprised by this. It's a difficult subject, and if we could get all of the things with the food pyramid away from the government and made it an independent entity, and I've talked about this before on a previous Jimmy Rants, but that's part of the problem, is we've backed ourselves into a corner where you really can't make changes without upsetting the apple cart. So I say we completely dump the apple cart out, we move to the next county over, and we start all over again. If we did that, then real change could happen. All right, guys, that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. As always, go to jimmyrants.com, and here's how it works. We start off on Instagram. I do Instagram Lives with these very engaging people here today. Thank you for all the great comments, guys, today on Instagram. So go follow me there at Livin' Low Carb Man. That's LIVINLOWCARBMAN. And then if you didn't catch it live, you can watch it on the replay for 24 hours there. Then we pop it over onto YouTube, where you can see all the past episodes. And then finally, we have a Jimmy Rants podcast, which you should be able to access wherever you listen to podcasts. All of those links, you guys, are located at jimmyrants.com. So until next time, you guys, we'll see you then.